Right, well, the disruption of the workplace from COVID has been dubbed the Great Resignation, with millions of people leaving their jobs or perhaps planning to do so. To tell us more, Joydeep Hor from People and Culture and Strategies joining us now live. Joydeep, great to talk to you. The Great Resignation, we keep hearing about this, and of course we know what's going on in the labour market. It's already under pressure with so many corporations struggling to find workers. Why are people at this point looking to resign and perhaps find another job?
It's very interesting that we've now put a label on something that I think has been brewing since the onset of the pandemic some 18, 19 months ago. And I think it's a combination of things. I think for starters, the way people work now has changed drastically compared to the way they worked 2 years ago. And what that has meant is that at its most granular level, people have reflected on some of the most fundamental concepts of what it even means to be employed. And simple things like, if you are working from home a couple of days a week, and certainly if you're working from home for a prolonged period of time, like so many workers globally, and even here in Australia, we're talking several months, and in some instances the better part of the last 18, 19 months, you realise that there is not only a very blurred boundary between your workplace and your home, but some of the things that may have been instilled into you in terms of, well, work equals physical co-location with your co-workers. Work requires you, for a whole range of reasons, to get up in the morning, exercise, do your routine, and then you have to be at your workplace, at your desk, at your workstation for however many number of hours in the day. All of a sudden, that gets thrown out the window. And so when you start to play around with and challenge at an individual level some of those very fundamental concepts of the employment relationship, naturally, I think people are going to start thinking about, well, what does work even mean to me? And if really this is just about an income source, and I can do so much and integrate much more of my lifestyle and social life and balance and all of those kinds of things, do I even need to be employed? Or at the very least, is now a time for a change? And I think there's a range of things that are going on in people's minds. And part of the real problem and challenge for employers is that, whereas in the ordinary course of things, those people might have been able to socialise those concepts with peers, the opportunity to do that has been significantly curtailed. So people are having to internalise a lot of those thoughts. People are talking more to family members rather than colleagues, rather than their managers and bosses. And I think this is going to be a very real phenomenon come the next 6 to 12 months in particular.
Joydeep, I find all that fascinating on so many levels, but one thing that you said there, that people will be considering whether they even need to be employed. I mean, that's a very white collar, upper echelon type concept, right? A lot of that is for these people close to retirement. Done a bit of reading on that there are more people here and in the States bringing forward their retirement, or those who are working later in life now saying, I don't need it. And then you get the flip side of things, where you literally in Australia can't find people to work in restaurants and hotels, etc. So where's the middle ground, and how do employers deal with that? What's the prescription for that?
I think it's a really good point. Naturally, the extent to which this phenomenon is going to be realised and will play out will depend very much based on industry sector. It'll depend very much on where people are situated from a life point of view, from an age point of view, from a financial commitments point of view. But I think there's certainly going to be a challenge for employers in restating and perhaps even reforming what is their value proposition. And this has been a buzz phrase for a number of years in terms of organisations talking about their employee value proposition, which at its core is really, why should you work for me? Why should you as an individual spend so much of your life energy and weekly time and devote that to me and my organisation? And I think this is where employers are going to have to go back to the drawing board in many instances, because a lot of the things that have worked for them previously are not going to continue to work for them in the future. And there is going to be an expectation, and it's already starting to be articulated, that people will challenge any notion that is put to them that they have to come into their primary place of work. Even hybrid working is going to be balked at by a number of people if the opportunity for them to work from anywhere, and a number of organisations are approaching us at the moment to help them develop a work from anywhere policy. And I mean, if you play this out, we are really starting to talk about some pretty weird concepts, or certainly concepts that would have been weird 2 or 3 years ago. This is the future. And if employees are hearing that this is what's happening elsewhere, they will be asking questions of their current employer. And we're employees, with the greatest respect to a lot of them, don't fully appreciate that, well, it's one thing for the Googles and the Facebooks and whatever else to introduce particular policies, but for the mum and dad employer that's only employing 7 or 8 people, it's really hard to do a lot of those things and run a successful or effective business.
It very much rests with the employee at the moment, given that employers are struggling to find workers as it is, but also to retain their employees. Therefore, perhaps they're going to have to sweeten the deal as such to retain them.
That's right, and there will be income pressure. It won't just be in the flexibility area. It will be in terms of more creative ways of retaining remuneration, training opportunities, embracing things that. And a really good example is online education, because one of the things that we've seen is a lot of courses and programs offered by institutions that might have required a travel cost, might have required a person to be away from their workplace for a significant period of time in order to participate in that. Now these things are available online. And so we've seen a change in a number of the offerings societally. And employers may well need to ask themselves a question, well, if there's an expectation that that's now theoretically cheaper for me to fund that for an employee, what's my response going to be to that employee if I'm going to say no?
Joydeep, I hope you don't mind me being so bold, but I do note that you are in your office today.
Absolutely. Yes.
What are the benefits of having your workforce around you? And do we risk losing connection, social connection, cultural connection with our employees if they can work from anywhere? Because there are benefits to being at work.
Look, there absolutely are. And I think what's going to be really interesting is as people start to come back to their workplace, and I'm talking primarily here about Australia, as people start to come back to the workplace at this time, we know that Melbourne Cup usually marks the start of the silly festive season. Pick your adjective, I guess, that fits. People are going to start to be reminded of the importance of that camaraderie. And we're hearing a lot of this anecdotal feedback about people saying it is really nice to be back. I think people are going to expect some kind of graduated approach to some kind of full return, but I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of this does almost turn on its head, and all of these the flirtations with hybrid working and extensive working from home might actually dissipate in the first half of next year as well, as people start to really understand and enjoy the companionship and the camaraderie and the benefits of collaboration that you can only realistically get when you're co-located.
Joydeep, thanks for joining us from People and Culture Strategies.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.